Hey guys, it's Jim Bounds at Motorhome Rehab Ranch. And this summer, obviously it's because of the summer, but a lot of you guys are picking these coaches up. And I would tell you that I have explained the crossover, the crack on the exhaust crossover so many times. I've got videos out on it, but I'm going to do one specific video right now, right here, exactly what the problem is. And gentlemen, please listen to this and share it. I've done several videos on this and I don't want to do them again. I want you guys to spread this word. It's so important. Okay. Intake manifold crack issue. GM made the world's first and only concave intake manifold for the Tornado. That's to get that big motor under the hood. They actually dropped the carburetor below the plenum of the head. Now, I'm going to explain this real carefully. I want you to listen. This is a furnace. I know it doesn't look like one. This is a furnace. Now, when the heat comes out of the back of that flue of the furnace to go up and to go out, right there is going to get really hot, isn't it? Because you've got to bend heat. This is going to get hot. Make sense? All right. Remember that. Bending hot air makes whatever makes it bend hot. All right. Now, if you look at our engine from the front, here's the two heads. Here's your block. I know. These are the two heads, valve covers. Okay? Got the idea. Now, right here is the intake manifold. And normally, the carburetor will sit up here. Intake manifold goes up here. You've seen this. Okay? And it's filled in. Well, GM, because this motor was so big, what GM did is they made an intake manifold like this. Here's the plate carburetor sits on, and it goes like that. Now our carburetor is right here, below the head. All right? Now, you ever looked on a dual exhaust system and you see a crossover pipe? In other words, you've got a pipe going out the back, two pipes, dual exhaust, and here's your engine. Ford has a pipe right here in between the two exhaust pipes. You say, well, what's that for? This engine has 4 explosions on this side, 4 explosions on this side. There is a harmonic balancer in the front of it that's supposed to balance it out. There's a flywheel in the back that's weighted, and the crank is weighted so when this one fires, that one fires, this one fires, the motor doesn't go like this. Make sense? And it does a pretty good job. But the way to truly balance an engine is to share the exhaust crossovers on each side. Boy, this eraser is not much. Bear with me, guys. All right. Now, you've got your heads and you've got your intake. And now we understand that the intake goes down, carburetor's down here, and the head's up here. Okay? So when you bend air, now think about this. This head, when you look down on this head, you got two heads here. All right? Now, you got water jackets, the front and back, and right in the middle is a port You got two cylinders here, two cylinders here, and all that other stuff, rocker arms and all that junk. But coming off the side of the head, again, this is the head. Here's your valve cover. Okay, right on this side of the head, under the intake, there is an exhaust port right here on each head. And what that's doing is it's balancing the engine right through the middle of the engine. GM understand this crossover situation and actually built it into the heads. You've got a pass through right here between the two heads to balance the engine. All right. Now, the exhaust needs to go straight through, because if it doesn't, say if it does something like this, it goes, we're going to look at a side profile now. You got your heads, and you got the exhaust crossover right in the middle. Now, remember we said that the carburetor is below the plenum of the head. So this exhaust has to go, hits big metal plate, as the carburetor's on it, hits that, air is forced down, hits here, cross over here, hits here, over here, hits here, and then makes it to the other one. This bending of this heat causes the middle of this intake manifold to get really, really hot. Okay? Really hot. So when you look down on your engine, let's see if that works better. There we go. Camera girl had the idea of the right thing. I guess the eraser needs to be cleaned. But when you bend, when you look down at your intake manifold, here are your heads, and you look down at your intake manifold, and here's your carburetor right in the middle with the 4 holes. You look down, it's burnt all through here. Paint's burnt off of it. Right through here, it got hot, hot, hot. Now, when you get a piece of cast metal, which this intake manifold is, when you get a piece of cast metal and you heat one section of it, you heat the middle of it, and not here and not here. This is hotter than here or here. Cast metal gets brittle when you do that, right? It's brittle. Now what happens? GM didn't do this on purpose. And to be honest with you, we did not see this problem for what, 20, 25 years? But what happens, if you look down the plate of our intake, there's 4 holes. Okay? There are 4 holes. Come down here, take a look at this. There are 4 holes, and right here, we're looking right here at right in between. Tilt that up and let them see here. Right there, the metal cracks. And here it is on a carburetor, on an intake manifold. Right between the secondary ports, where it's the thinnest metal, there's a crack right there. You can see it. Now that crack's okay. That crack's okay. Put it back there. You see it? Very good. All right. Now that crack's okay until it reaches, again, here's the looking down, and here's the crack that you see on the top. That's okay until this crack reaches the bottom of the floor on the inside of that hole, right down the side of that thing. When that crack reaches here, right there, what's underneath here? Remember that crossover? Remember that exhaust that goes into the port on each head? And it bends down over, bends up, and gets to here. This gets hot. This is the weakest point on the intake manifold, and it cracks. What's under there? That's exhaust gases. When that crack reaches the floor, exhaust gases contaminate your vacuum. Remember, you have to have 18 inches of vacuum to idle. You only need 5 inches of vacuum actually to idle, but you need 18 to run. if there's a crack right here and exhaust gets in here and contaminates your vacuum. And you'll know this because when your engine is cold, when your engine is cold, it's smaller than it is when it's hot. That's right. Engine expands. Metal expands when it gets hot. Okay. When that crack expands, opens up, this exhaust gas gets into the intake manifold. That's it. You'll probably have not more than 5 inches of vacuum, and it will fire up. But the second you put it in gear, it dies. Why is that? Because at idle, you're supposed to have about 18 inches of vacuum. Maybe 18.5, 19, whatever. And the vacuum, till it gets to 5, is what you drive with. That's what you push your foot. 18 to 5. When you gag it, it goes lower. Now, instead of 18, if you were at 5 and you put any more pressure on it to 0, this drops and the engine will turn off. Right? Engine turns off because you have no vacuum. Why do you have no vacuum? Because the crack on this end, on this thing right here, on this right between the secondary ports, reach the floor. This exhaust gas contaminates the vacuum, and you don't have good vacuum, and you can't go. So what does it mean to you? You say, well, how does that? How would I find that? How would I think that would happen? Here's what would happen. Fired up, runs beautiful. Everything's great. You actually look at your vacuum and you have about 18.5 inches of vacuum. Everything's good. Everybody's happy. And you take off. Pretty soon, it won't go any faster. And then pretty soon it just starts to pop back. It won't go, and it pulls to the side of the road. It may shut off. All right. So you're on the side of the road. You go to fire it up. It might fire up if the crack is small enough that it gives it enough vacuum. It may fire up and sit there and run beautifully. You put it in gear, dies. That's a classic example of low vacuum. And low vacuum is a classic example of this crack. Now say you pull over, it dies, it pulls over, and you got to try to start it and nothing starts. This happened to a gentleman, to a couple up in Alaska. They're traveling Alaska and their intake cracked. It was shut off. They pull over, would not start. They waited about 20 minutes. Engine cools down, gets small enough, boom, it'll fire up. That means their crack is bigger than most of us, because until the engine actually cooled down, there was not enough vacuum in it to start that motor. You follow? Usually, you'll pull over and it might start right back up, because if it can find 5 inches of vacuum, you say, what's vacuum? Vacuum is the suck that sucks the fuel from the carburetor into the motor. Okay, and if you have to have vacuum. Now, on a fuel injected engine, you're shooting the fuel. Okay, so you may have a fuel injection engine that will actually start up and run, but the minute you stick it in gear, it dies. Right? This is a classic example, and many of you this summer, this is happening. Why? Because it's hot. Again, the older these things get, the more this crack is going to be evident, and the more it's going to affect us. You say, well, mine's been running fine. Maybe I should just leave it alone. No. I'm telling you, brother, you need to pull your intake up, whether you have a problem or not, because it will happen sooner or later, and you know that it's going to happen at the worst possible time. You know this. So you want to fix this. And the way that you fix it, is you pull the intake manifold up. Oh my God, I can't. Yes, you can. You need to do this. You get rid of your water. You drop your water out. Bolts on the top of the intake. Take the carburetor off. And when you take the carburetor off, I'll almost bet you dollars to donuts you'll see this crack. I'll bet you. Because the older they get, the more they got heat, and the more this this cast intake deteriorates. All right. So you need to pull up the intake manifold, clean it off, be sure that's the only crack. Be sure this is the only crack you see, not on the bottom, not anywhere else. Visually look at it. Some guy says, well, I'll have it checked out. I'll have it the crack checked out and have it magnaflux. Well, you can do that, but I got to tell you, just cleaning it up and physically looking at it, you will see this, and you will see if there's another crack similar. So if you don't want to put the expense out, that's good. Clean it up real good and look at it. Okay. You're going to pull the intake up on a 455. You're going to go buy a Mr. Gasket number 404 gasket set, not the better one, the cheap one. Mr. Gasket 404. Then you want to get a piece of 20 gauge stainless steel and cut a plate just a little bit bigger, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch bigger than the exhaust port that you find. Now, some people have them available. Mondello does. Applied has some that Springfield Ignition made. My personal opinion, all right, I may get some people upset here, but I've just got to say this to you. My personal opinion is I want to have gasket material all the way around this stainless steel plate, all the way around it, right? Some are out there that have the bottom is open and you're just going to seal it with the sealant. I don't want that. Some of them have an indent. The problem with an indent, where you press and you bend metal, you actually fracture metal. And the block off plate that you find that's got an indent is a weak point right at that edge where it bent. How do I know this? Because I've seen it. Okay. You want a flat piece of stainless steel, about 20 gauge, just a little bigger than the exhaust crossovers. And with that Mr. Gasket number 404 paper gasket set, when you tighten it down, when you torque it down, the intake down, it will form around that stainless steel plate. And you will have a gasket below it and above it. I feel that's the best thing. You're also going to seal it down with ultra gray Permatex. I will get 2 tubes. You take the stainless steel plate and you glue it to the head, the raw head. Just glue it in place. Permatex will hold it in place, both sides. Take your gasket, put sealant, Permatex on both sides of the gasket, all the way, not just the water jackets, not just here, not the whole gasket. After 50 years of heat cycles, 3 times hotter, because we're pulling three loads, these heat cycles have caused this engine to really, really get hot over the last 50 years. The block has got to warp, the heads are got to warp, the intake's warped. There's no way that a thin steel turkey tray, which is what you'll find in there, by the way, there's no way that you can expect to have a good seal. So putting in a fiber gasket set and gluing it down is the way to do it. And I use the number 404, the cheap one, because we want that paper to crush down around that stainless steel plate, because it'll be on top of it, it'll be at the top and bottom all around it. And that's what we want. The nicer Mr. Gasket will not crush down. 404 is their, you call it entry level or basic gasket, and that's the one you want to use. Right? You pull the intake up, you put the stainless steel plates on there, you glue the new intake, the cleaned up intake back down. Okay, glue it all back down. Now put your carburetor. Now somebody says, well, should I go get a new intake? I've heard this so many times. Let me answer this. Should I get a good new intake? This one's cracked. If you get a new intake, you're either going to have to get this custom aluminum intake that's concave, or you're going to have to build a doghouse. The custom aluminum intake is a lot of money. Okay. Now, at Co-op, we built $12,000 motors using the original cast intake, putting stainless steel block on place. And we had 100, not 99, not 90, 100% success if it's put in properly. Do you need to buy a new intake? No, you don't. If that's the only crack there is, you can use that intake. Block it off. This is a main ingredient in every engine rebuild. You look at your intake, oh, it's not cracked. Oh, that's fine. No, you need to do this. Everyone needs to do this right now if you don't know that your exhaust crossovers are blocked. If you want to wait until it causes a problem, you'll be like the guy in Alaska. You know, it's wonderful when you could take lemons and turn it into lemonade. And his answer after we absolutely got down to the problem said, well, we'll drive an hour and we'll relax and check out something and we'll drive another hour. These guys are in Alaska and they're dealing with the crossover. They did not know about it before. They definitely, when they get back to the States, they're definitely going to know about this thing and they're going to fix it right away. Gentlemen, please do this. Block the exhaust crossovers. If you have an original intake. Now, if you have an Edelbrock Performer where it's up here, I still would block the crossovers because the carburetor is an aluminum, cast aluminum part. And it gets hot enough, it'll start warping, right? Now, one of the things that we have in our coach that they build ours with, if you get a rebuild kit, come down here and look at this. If you get a rebuild kit for this carburetor, it will have 4 different base plates, all right? 4 different base plates. There are different openings. This is the one we want. This one right here, right? Felpro, let's see. Felpro number 60334. Now, this is not a 60334. That is a regular paper gasket. What we want is called a thermal gasket. It's a thick, it has a thick like this. Here, take a look. Take a look at this. Now, this is a thermal gasket. And I see this. Matter of fact, the one that we just looked at, yeah. See, it was open right there. It had this gasket. And in their favor is, it is a thicker thermal gasket. I wish I had another picture of this. But let's see if I can. There. You can see how this is thicker than this one. This is a thermal gasket that eliminates, or not eliminate, but it drops the heat transferred to the carburetor. But as you see, it's a solid one. And when you rebuild, this is what you get. You want to get a 60334 Felpro, which would be this profile, but is a thermal gasket like this. That helps keep the heat away from the carburetor. All right. So you want to get that gasket. All right. Now, when you get a rebuild kit, you will not get the gasket. Okay. So buy the gasket. Now, what parts are you going to need to do the intake? First, you're going to need a Mr. Gasket 404 intake gasket set. On you 403 guys, it's like a 407G or something like that. Look at the sheet. You'll need that. You're going to need the 2 stainless steel block-off plates. You can make them. Get a piece of 20 gauge stainless, anyways, got it, and just cut them out. Okay. You're going to need 2 tubes of ultra gray Permatex, okay, to glue it all down. You need to get a new thermostat. Anytime you open the water system, you need to change the thermostat, because when the thermostat fails, you're in trouble. Okay, you want to use a 180 degree. There are many people done different things, but I use 180 degree thermostat, anything but a Robert Shaw. I know Robert Shaw is going to hate saying this, but we do not want a larger hole when it opens up. We want a restriction. We want a thermostat that has a smaller hole to hold the water back for our really fat heads to transfer heat into the water, let the water stay in there long enough by putting a restriction on it. That make sense? So you get a new thermostat, 180 degree. You're going to have to get an Oldsmobile gasket, because if the thermostat came with a gasket, it came with a Chevy gasket. Oldsmobile gasket's different. All right. Those are in your 60334 gasket, carburetor gasket. That's all you need. That's the only parts you need to do this. All right. Give me a call if you understand this. You understand you need to do it. And if you got a box of tools and some time, you and I can do it together. This is just so important, please. You neglecting this will cause problems down the road, guaranteed. All right, we beat this one up. I won't talk about this anymore unless somebody else comes and asks me, and then I'm going to do it again. All right, this is a big deal for a GMC, and I appreciate you guys following this. You're a ranch hand. Matter of fact, the next time you're a ranch hand, I'm going to ask you, hey, your crossover's blocked? All right. Well, look, thanks for the time. Hit like and share and all that kind of stuff. Ranch hands, really, thank you for your support. Give me comments. Tell me what's happening here. Tell me how crazy I am. I am. Thanks. We'll see you next time.